Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Cocaine.
Durfing.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt Marchesini. Tonight, we are joined by the Cincinnati Bearcats representative of the College Huddle, and his name is Darin Russell, and he is with the Go Bearcats, aka also Cats Keller Social Club. Darin, how are you doing tonight? And 3-game skid, a similar spot for K-State right now. How are vibes in Bearcat land?
It's always hard to gauge because, we started off well enough. I know people want that Pitt game back still, famously. But I think the realization for the rational mind is we're just not there yet, where we need to be. Progress has been made. But maybe we're not, at that plateau. We can compete, throughout the conference, I think, but to be a force, that is still to be determined.
TBD indeed. But before we get into the details, this beer crack is brought to you by Annie Mae's Parlor, located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. If you are a Bearcats fan listening to this, by the way, if you're making the trip to Manhattan, definitely stop by. It is the best bar in Aggieville, and it's my favorite destination on game days and school nights alike. They've also been in business for 50 years, as you can see from the koozie there. And our good friend Jeff has been rocking and rolling with us all football season, hopefully through basketball season as well. And he's been a killer sponsor of ours, so we want to do whatever we can to drive as many feet into Annie Mae's as possible. But Annie Mae's, far and away my favorite destination in Aggieville. I always make a point to go visit Annie Mae's when I go back to the Little Apple. They feature a wide variety of craft cocktails, draft beers, and everything in between. They also have events like comedy, live music, and all sorts of other stuff. They've got Local Love Bingo tonight. That's happening right now. So if you're in Manhattan, maybe don't watch this and put your phone down, go walk over whatever to Annie Mae's to go participate in Local Love Bingo. They've also got Trivia Smackdown happening on tomorrow, Wednesday night, and then Mighty Fine Jam Night will be Thursday, November 21st. So jam-packed schedule of events this week at Annie Mae's Parlor. Be sure to stop by and be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. All right, Darin. So I know we kind of already teed it up a little bit. But before we get into kind of the details of this matchup and the details of this year's Cincinnati Bearcats team, how did you get involved with podcasting, covering the Bearcats, and, just tell us a little bit more. Are you a lifelong fan, alum, former journalist? What's your story?
I am an alum. I did do some student radio back in the day. I had a little show with my former partner, Zach Jones. We went by the left bench. So not starters, but playing left bench. He went on to do radio. I went on to a career in tech and office work. And then I am a part of a tailgate group. And our president needed someone to step in and, do some press. And so I did a little press blitz last year and ended up on Go Bearcats. And at that point, Brendan was doing it solo. He wanted me to come back, and I just kept coming back, and then I was permanent member at that point. So kind of reliving those college radio dreams and talking about my alma mater and a team I love dearly.
Bob is a little emotional when you said college radio. Big college radio guy over there. Well, let's get into kind of the big picture for Cincinnati this season. And Scott Satterfield, he entered year 2 after kind of an average tenure, probably at Louisville, you would say, and then in year 1 at Cincinnati. But he's definitely got things moving in the right direction, I would say, making some incremental improvement after 3-9 last season. Cincinnati 5-5 entering the K-State game this weekend and trying to get to bowl eligibility. I mean, the 3-game skid that got brought up the past 3 weeks, but 2 games to kind of get yourself in a situation to potentially make a bowl. How would you say how much this team has improved from last year to this year? And does making a bowl game change maybe the tune from Cincinnati fans when it comes to Scott Satterfield as a whole?
Yeah, I'd say for me at least the tune is a little mixed. If you ask me, is Scott Satterfield the guy? I don't expect him to be the guy. I expect him to be a guy to really kind of establish us, in the power 4 landscape. But if he messes around and gets us to a higher plane, so be it. Look, the goal this year was always to get to bowl eligibility. I think the disappointment comes in when you're playing some really decent ball at the beginning of the year, and then you start to skid like this. Your quarterback, who started off hot, wasn't throwing a lot of interceptions. Well, actually, really not throwing any interceptions. Then proceeds to throw 2 at UCF, and then throw 3 or throw 2 at West Virginia, and then another magical 5th one in there somewhere. That starts to kind of weigh on people. The results aren't matching what this team is capable of. And insult to injury, you're in all these games. Up until this point, I think we were losing by single digits on all of those games. I think maybe CU and just recently Iowa State, some garbage time touchdowns just to add insult to injury. But ultimately, those were 1-score games until when it mattered. So I think it's just a little disappointment to kind of see this team kind of stall out a little bit, where you thought the defense was starting to figure it out. And then it turns into the offense starts to not be able to put up points consistently. And you just got people wondering what if. I think people are looking towards the special teams. That's kind of the hot name or hot team that people throw under the bus, and the DBs. I don't think that completely holds true. I think our special teams has gotten better this year, but we call him West Side Jesus over here. His results aren't really holding up to the rest of the team on that end. So he may be a name to go. Scott Satterfield, I think, has honestly called a pretty good offensive, few games here. And then the defense just needs to figure some things out still. They're not there yet, but they can. Yeah, good.
Yeah, so you bring up the offense just right there. Scott Satterfield's calling plays. Overall, they're like 40th in rushing, 45th in passing. That's just middle of the pack kind of stuff, but there's some interesting stats scattered throughout there. You brought up one with the interceptions. There's only 5 on the season. That's pretty damn good. And you're 17th in the country on 4th down conversions. I would like for you to touch on that, maybe how aggressive that offense is going. But what really was the spark that turned this offense around from what it was last year to being a competitive team that got you 5 wins so far this season?
I'd say just an overhaul, really. I won't say overhaul. It is the same offense, essentially. They still like to run everything out of the pistol. They still, want a quarterback who's a little bit mobile. They want those stretch plays for their run base. I think having an experienced offensive line has helped. Everybody, you can really start to see that come together, that run game. You kind of see that vision start to form towards the end of the year, despite kind of limping to the end of the season. You have a more competent quarterback in Sorsby. That's no shot at Emory Jones. I just think he, could never stick anywhere, and that bit more of a mental game at that point, I think, for him. So unfortunately, he really, couldn't have his offense lean on him to be the one to do that. And then just showing up the wide receivers a little bit, having someone other than Xavier Henderson to carry that load, and then adding a tight end as well in Joe Royer. So just some all around improvements on that front.
I love it, and one of the biggest improvements I think from our perspective, outsiders looking in, is Brendan Sorsby. I mean, you mentioned he's been kind of a key part to the success of the team so far this year, and I was a noted Brendan Sorsby denier at the beginning of the season, kind of throughout the offseason. I just didn't feel like he had proven much in his time at Indiana, and granted, he could have been a good recruit. I wasn't really familiar with his recruiting, pedigree or prowess, but I've been proven very, very wrong on him. So I want to admit my fault there. But he's been impressive. He's got 2,400 plus yards through the air, 300 plus on the ground, 16 touchdowns, and like we've already mentioned, 5 interceptions on 316 attempts, which again, I think that's like top 20 in the nation in turnover percentage for a quarterback, and interception percentage on that number of attempts. So of quarterbacks with 2,400 yards in the league as well, passing wise, he has the fewest interceptions, which I think says a lot about him being in that echelon of, a Shedeur Sanders or Josh Hoover as far as passing yards, but he's not turning the ball over. I guess I'm curious from UC fans standpoint, how confident were you that Sorsby was going to be as good as he has been so far this year? And what do you think has been the primary key to his success within that Cincinnati offense?
I think people knew they were excited about him because I think they were just starved for a step up. I think the key is, most people might not agree with this, but I think the key is he's got a coach that he works well with. I think Satterfield saw something that he could work with, last year watching his tape at Indiana. And I mean, you got to think that's his background as a football mind is quarterback. I think he just works well with him. He sometimes it's not always the best. I think he has a tendency to try to warm him up when he's cold, and that's not what the offense needs at times. Or he shies away from the run game at the wrong time, or vice versa. But I think they just work really well together, and those minds mesh.
I want to talk a little bit about Corey Kiner, sixth in the Big 12 in rushing yards currently this season. He's 97 yards off of a 1,000-yard year on the ground for the second straight year. Obviously, against K-State, we hope he doesn't hit 97 yards, but recent history will prove he may hit it, but who knows. But anyway, he's a hometown guy. He had 1 year at LSU, came and transferred back to Cincinnati. From an outsider's perspective, looking at some of his highlights, he looks like a little bit one-dimensional from a running back perspective, as he's not used as much in the passing game. A couple other guys that we see some rushing yards with. Evan Pryor has almost 400 on the ground. Sorsby over 300 yards on the ground this year. Seems like the running game has had a kind of a huge resurgence in the Big 12 in recent years, and especially this year with a bunch of teams who have really great running backs. How would you say the Cincinnati run threat is compared to other teams in the Big 12, and maybe what do you expect to see from that group against the K-State defense that's the 25th most efficient in the in rushing this season?
Yeah, I mean, any smart coach would try to run the ball given some of the recent troubles. He hasn't always been known to stick with the run game as a coach when it's working. But sometimes that just could be recency bias. When something fails, it fails. When it works, it works. But look for them to try to hit you with that 1-2 combo. Kiner, as much as he's sort of a bounce back, he's still really there to kind of wear you down. And he's gotten shifty enough where he can break off a decent run. He's not going to go for like a 70-yard run unless he's just got that open grass in front of him. But he can get free. But really, he's there. He's there to wear you down. Prior, they'll try to hit a home run with him if they see those gaps are still open and you look tired. So just look for that 1-2 punch. Or if Kiner's just carrying the rock and getting 4 or 5 yards of carry, they may just stick with him.
Let's talk receivers, because history proves Matt was talking about 97 yards from the running back. Really what we should be worried about is the receiving and the tight end duo coming out from Cincinnati. we've struggled stopping, passing attacks, and receivers just seem to do whatever they feel like doing it. And you guys got a scary one. Xavier Henderson, absolute freak, dog. 632 yards on the season, 12 yards per catch. That's tough. And then you brought up the tight end as well. We know a Chiefs Kingdom. We know a Cincinnati alma mater guy and Kelsey. But this Joe Royer, also tough. These two scare me because what we thought we were going to get with Arizona State with the Tyson kid and what's your boy, Bob? I can't remember his name. Mateer. They cooked us. It wasn't fun. Wasn't fun watching it. But give me the rundown on this receiving core, what your pass catchers are doing. And if you had to set an over-under between those two, how many receiving yards are we talking? I'm freaked out. I'd probably set the number really, really high.
It's hard to say what way our games are going to go. Whatever seems to be working for offense, any given game is what's working. Like Sorsby, recently had a bad game against West Virginia. We really didn't turn it on until the end there. Almost came back, but still didn't. And then he, wasn't huge on the air last week, but tore it up on the ground. So it's hard to say what we're going to get. Yes, you would hope that they can exploit that and get the passing offense back up and running again. Henderson is really good on those comeback routes. Just for a just consistent 5-6 yards, maybe even 10 if depending on how deep they set it. Warriors usually going to try to hit come through those open windows in the middle. It's hard to say. And fun fact, Shoutout Taylor was supposed to be the Warrior this year for Cincinnati.
That's right.
Difference in creative visions happened in that front. They should be able to have a big week, hopefully. But it's just hard to say which portion of that offense is going to get the love.
Not only was he supposed to be the Joe Royer, but he was also supposed to be the guy at Colorado, and then decided that there were creative differences with Dion as well, apparently. Moving in, I guess Pat Shurmur as well. But moving over to the defensive side of the ball, Cincinnati is 22nd in the country in rushing EPA per play on defense. So they have a very efficient defense, 3 spots ahead of K-State, which is the best defense we've faced in the rushing game aside from BYU as it stands today as far as defensive efficiency. BYU currently ranked 17th in the country in defensive efficiency based on EPA per play, but that's just efficiency. Cincinnati 65th in total rushing yards allowed, 72nd in passing yards allowed, and 116th in interceptions thrown. So what I gather from that is the DBs aren't really ball hawks. They're not necessarily going after contested catches, trying to get the ball and return that for an interception. But what have been the bright spots on the Cincinnati defense this year, and where may they potentially have an advantage this weekend going into the matchup against Casey?
I'd say the linebacking core. Really. We're running a 3-3-5, right? And the complaint that you tend to get with that is they're not good at stopping the rush because you have that automatic mismatch on the line. But what they've really figured out is how to and what you should be doing is to get those linebackers to plug those gaps, play those assignments, and run downhill. And then also try to cover the outside for any QBs to escape. You would, if you asked fans during the game, they'd think our rushing defense was pitiful, terrible. We're getting torn up. They're like, stupid 3-3-5. Because that's just kind of what they know off the top of their head. But it's working. They to cover up for that deficiency, they are having their linebackers who can cover in space, but also hold their own in the gaps, play their assignments, and that's just important. The DBs still a work in progress. I think Satterfield, did what he could recruiting wise this offseason. One returner is Young, who's kind of cemented that number 1 spot. But other than that, you got a stable of guys kind of just rotating in that backfield. He wanted to get faster at least and a little bit longer. Speed is going to usually be the easiest thing you can do to kind of cover up those mismatches. I think he's still hunting for, consistent size and measurables across the board. So really right now, I think our DBs are just kind of worried about getting beat deep because the big play is still, sort of that weakness. especially those post routes kind of coming across the middle. And so I think that's how you get the results you have right now on defense.
All right, I want to dig in a little bit to the defensive line, and first shout out to Dante Corleone, the Godfather.
Yeah.
Definitely a fan favorite among the entire Big 12, Big 12 all-name team, of course, especially after returning from some medical issues. Sounds like he may be back this weekend for this game. He's obviously been a major headliner for this defensive line group, but who else maybe that we should be on the lookout, especially, anybody who stepped up in his absence and, maybe who we need to be afraid of on Saturday?
I'd say to follow that, Eric Phillips on the edge. Although he's kind of a little quiet, but he's been good at creating pressure. Really, the whole D-line room has stepped up where they could. You got a lot of young guys. We had 3 presumed starters go down at the beginning of the season, including Dante. So it's really been up to them to try to find guys who can step up. And it's just been more about playing assignment football. I think Dante gets all the the credit during the game. He just eats up double teams. Gets after you a little bit, but he's not really there to necessarily sack the quarterback. He's there to stuff that hole and make you uncomfortable, and then just blow the center back into the quarterback if a team is silly enough to just leave him one-on-one like that. Again, it still comes down to the linebackers to really kind of make those plays. The line's really there to just kind of hold those initial gaps. A lot of those sacks are coming from the linebackers coming downhill and filling those holes.
Well, let's talk about those linebackers. And I got one in particular, Jared Bartlett. Am I saying that right? I hope I am. He's a dog. He's he's everywhere on the field. 50+ tackles, 7.5 sacks as well from the linebacker position in a 3.35. That's kind of impressive. He's second in the Big 12 in sacks, right behind our boy, Brendan Mott. Talk to me about this linebacking core. They got to be all over the field. And, going against this K-State offense, it could be hit or miss with our running game, especially if Avery Johnson doesn't feel like running the ball that day. They could be they could be getting some work in and putting us on bad positions. So explain to me what this linebacker core, and then I got a follow-up question. I don't want to age you, but I want a follow-up question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, Bartlett is absolutely just a dog. Like, he just athletic freak, high motor, without even talking to me, like, that guy plays for the love of the game. You just see it. Jack Dingle, was sort of the lone bright spot in that room last year. He's a little bit more of your traditional, blockhead, all-American linebacker body build. Not as strong in the pass game just because, his physicals on that. Again, more of a run stopper. They really expected Golday to get a lot of the limelight, and he has. But Bartlett's really been the one that's kind of, stepped up and hogged a lot of that attention. But look for Golday and Bartlett to kind of be those guys to, be all over the field, be able to play coverage, be able to run downhill and play assignments. That's what you're looking at right there.
Okay, now I don't want to age you, but there's a K-State, Cincinnati connection over the transfer portal early in the transfer portal era. This was 2000 and maybe like 12. Jeff Luke, linebacker, transfer from Florida State. That was one of my all-time favorite recruitments to follow, but he chose Cincinnati for, I think, maybe his final 2 years. But talk to me about that guy, because I miss those old transfer portal days.
Man, back in that point, like, Cincinnati was really just still scrapping to make a name for itself and be a household name. Yeah, we had those Big East days where we were under Brian Kelly, where we still had that AQ status. So we got a little bit of that history. But, when you always got a guy, from Florida State, you're like, oh, we got a Power 5 guy. Like, at that point, it wasn't really separated from Power 5, but bigger blue blood school and getting transfers like that always felt amazing. Just a huge block of a human. If I remember correctly, he used to wear the cutoff.
He did. He was absolutely nasty, man.
Yeah. That was a freak too for his size.
He was a real short. He couldn't have been but 5'9", maybe 5'10", but he would run around the field, and I wanted him to go to K-State so bad, and he chose Cincinnati. But he looked good in those red and black.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it was fun to watch him. I was still a student at that point, so yeah, I remember him.
Love the Jeff Luke call out. DBs, this is the last position group we're going to chat about. We've already touched on it a little bit, but Josh Minkins, he's got 2 interceptions on the year, leads the team in picks right now with 2, 3 pass deflections as well, and a fumble recovery. So he's doing other stuff outside of just, trying to go after guys in coverage. 38 total. Wait, I think that's a misprint. I've got this 38 total tackles. I wrote down sacks. So 38 sacks would be insane. 38 total tackles on the season. He seems like a dude that's going around doing a lot of stuff outside of just going after the ball. But like I mentioned, it doesn't seem like they're really going after a ton of contested catches, not really ball hawkish types of DBs. Where does this group shine though? And what would you say are the areas where they do really well? Because I know you already mentioned speed can be an issue for them when you get guys kind of in wide open space. Where do these guys shine? Where do they win?
They like to hit. That's that's pretty much. You mentioned Minkins. I mean, really, any of these guys, could have their name called any given day. Really, they love to hit. Not just that, jar the ball loose occasionally when they get up there and mix it in. I mean, you've seen Derek Canteen. We got Andre Pink Jr., who's legacy, and a walk-on. So it's there's anybody really. I mean, Logan Wilson's got his name called. Trayvon Gola Collard's also been seen out there making some plays. You just never know who's going to be the hero that day. I think they're all just really still scrapping to cement themselves. Like I said, I think Young is the only one that has that like permanent spot that's locked down. Obviously you have the star position and that's also specialized, but everybody else, it's just all over the place on that field. So yeah, you just don't know who's going to emerge as the star of the game.
All right. So give us some keys to victory for Cincinnati this weekend. Anything that you think is going to be important for them when they are coming to Manhattan on the road on a late game Saturday night?
Yeah, contain Johnson for sure. Don't let him get creative and run wild. That's going to be the main thing on offense. I mean, if your running game gets going, I mean, you guys have already eclipsed 1,000-yard rusher at this point. Again, we've been better in run stopping than I think our own fans give us credit for. So I don't foresee that happening. I think you guys will try to beat us through the air. But maybe they try to make you guys one-dimensional. 3 keys, make you one-dimensional. Play just clean offensive football. Like I said, Soares, we had a rough game against West Virginia. I think that kind of sticks in people's minds still. So that that includes just moving the ball long, just chewing up drives. They're really good at that when that offense is working. And then just don't give up the big play on defense. Actually, check that. Special teams has a better game. Actually, you want your Aussie punter to hit, and just flip the field. Normally he's really good at that. He had an off game against Iowa State, 15, 29-yard punts. So I look for Mason Fletcher to bounce back, hopefully. And then Hawks to just, use his missile of a leg to, help finish drives if we're not getting touchdowns.
Well, special teams has been a very, very, I don't know where Chef went, but hopefully he's cooking something up. Special teams has been a very, very hot button issue for K-State recently, especially when you look at the advanced stats, the field position game. K-State's like a bottom 20 team in FBS when it comes to field position. So if you've got a good punter, if you've got a good kicker, those guys could win the game for you, because K-State lately has not been winning in the margins. We still haven't figured out a long snapper who can get the ball to our kicker and our holder to where our kicker can even get a place kickoff for a field goal. But that's all a completely different subject for a different podcast. But hit us with your final score prediction. We'll give ours as well, but want to hear from you directly. What do you think?
I think this could go either way. Can I give you both, like positive, negative?
Yeah.
I think given our trends, this turns into like a sub 30-point game per, on either side. Either we squeak it out at like 31, 28 or something like that, or we lose a heartbreaker where it's like, 34, like 24 or something like that. Just 2-by-2 scores at the end.
I'll go ahead. I'll get the negative news out of the way. I'm going with the Bearcats in this one. Bearcats by 9, 29-20. I just haven't seen enough to think that this team's going to bounce back. And I don't know what's going on with Kleiner's family or anything, but things are bad right now. Bad vibes from me. Bad vibes from Bob.
A lot of bad vibes out there, but I still think we'll pull through. I think a lot of things will snap into place. Maybe not our place kicking. I don't know. Maybe not our long snapper. Maybe those aren't the snaps that happen, but the snap back to a victory will come back. So I've got it 28-17 Cats. Wildcat variety, baby.
Oh my God. This is tough because like being in the stands last week was just the worst feeling ever. I think it's going to be 31-28 K-State. That's going to entail that we somehow make a field goal, number one. And number two, I think there's some genuine, like, they know that they have the past 2 weeks have been really shitty and they don't want to put forth a performance at home like they did last week. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. I could see it either way. I mean, I could definitely see it 31-28 Cincinnati. I think K-State's going to pull it out in this game. For some reason, I can't describe why. I don't know.
You said the reason was want to. So is it the want to that's going to get us over the edge?
It might be.
Oh, okay. The want to. I didn't know, I didn't know that's something you could measure, but I'm down with want to. I want that as something that we can get us over the edge, the want to, because I want them to win too. God damn it.
I think it's going to come down to, both these teams, it's just who's going to figure it out first. Which team's going to figure out what's ailing them first? 3-game versus 2-game skid. Someone's got to want it more, basically. I think you're right, Matt. It's going to be a good game because of that, I think. But who knows is going to
let me get this real quick before we get you out of here. Who does Cincinnati play next?
TCU.
Okay. See, the thing is, we've got Iowa State next. And I mean, for the entire season, we've been hit or miss on these trap games. We've just been, let down spots, trap games. We just can't find a way through this schedule to just a smooth transition. It's really been hard. Maybe the best one was coming down from Colorado to West Virginia, getting that dub and finding a way to get KU. But after the KU loss, we fall apart to Houston. Bye week, you think we figure something out, and we look even worse versus Arizona State. So, going into a week where we have to play our, second biggest rival in the season on the last game of the year, I don't know. Maybe we're not up for Cincinnati. I don't know. Maybe that's where Bob's score comes from. It's a lot of I don't knows and a lot of want to. So
I just want to know how you're going to get 29.
Who said 29?
Bob.
I did.
Oh, Lord Jesus. That's a safety. That's a safety somewhere in there.
Like,
there's a safety in there. Safety, mixed extra point.
29.
I could see that happening. We have like weird, goofy moments on this team still. Last year, it was like we found just in most embarrassing ways to have something happen. Like we had a kickoff pop out of our guys' hands after he got plastered, and they just ran into the end zone against Baylor. Like it just, we found crazy ways to look bad. We still have some of those goofy moments here and there, so who knows?
Anything could happen. There could be a missed PAT that you end up.
Oh my God!
I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff that could happen, but thanks again for coming on the pod, Darin. It was awesome having you, getting to know you a little bit, getting to know this Bearcats team. Let the Cokeheads, which is what we call our friends and listeners, let the Cokeheads know where they can find you, and we'll give you the final word to shout out whatever you want to.
Yeah, me personally, you can find me at Russ the Field on all social media. Blue Sky. I'm on Twitter a little bit still. Instagram, really. Instagram's kind of my safe haven though. And then obviously Go Beer Cats is just our main podcast, our Cats Killer social club. You're wondering about that, by the way. That's really just we're within organization. A bunch of podcasts band together in the UC space and formed the Cats Killer Social Club. And then the huddle came knocking. And at that point, Go Pure Cats was still kind of the only active one. So there you go. That's little lore.
A podcast within a podcast, a community within a community.
Yeah.
Darin, thanks again for coming on. That's going to do it for us today. Once again, shout out to our sponsor, Anime's Parlor. Visit www.animes.com for a full list of their upcoming events. And again, they've been open for 50 years. If you're going to the game, if you're stopping by Manhattan, make your way. It's right in the middle of Aggieville. You really can't miss it unless you're walking to go down to, I don't know what Mojo's. Is Mojo's still around, Matt? Unless you're going, unless you're going to Mojo's, stop by Annie Mae's. There's no reason not to take that quick little right turn right down 12th Street. But we are also the K-State representative on the College Huddle. Darin and I have already mentioned it, but they are the Bearcats representative on the College Huddle as well. So follow the College Huddle at thecollegehuddle.com and on social media at College Huddle. And last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. Chef.
I'm glad we found a good UC fan. Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all Coke and no joke, and Bearcat Matt is not our guest on the pod. Wildcat Country.
Let's ride, baby.
Let's ride.